It's no,
Um, their federally recognized name is the Rosebud Sioux. She is a co-founder of an Indigenous founded and non-profit called Protect Native Elders, and she works as the Indigenous Outreach Coordinator. Jo, I'm so glad that you're here, and I would love you to please bring us together so that we can step into sacred space through which to do this call. Thank you.
absolutely. The Lakota believe that the Great Spirit creator is actually a combination of Unchimaka, which is Mother Earth, Grandmother Earth, and Wankantonka, that's the Great Spirit. It is that connection, all of it together. And so when we pray, we talk about the Great Spirit, Wankantonka, but that's what it is, all those things. And I'm honored to be here in this healing and whole space, which we don't get to participate in often. Wankantonka, whose voice I hear in the wind, whose breath gives life to all the world. Hear me, I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may understand the things you have taught my people. Help me to remain calm and strong in the face of all that comes towards me. Let me learn the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. Help me seek pure thoughts and act with the intention of helping others. Help me find compassion without empathy overwhelming me. I seek strength not to be greater than my brother, sister, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes. So when life fades, as the fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame. And this was translated by Chief Yellow Lark. And I just add my words, Goddess, Creator, Universe, Wankantonka, bless all of us who've come together and let our minds be wise and our hands be busy with good work. And I pray this. We say, at the end of a prayer, we say, Mitaku Oyasin. So I'll let all of you say that, and I'll say it, and then everybody also say it, Mitaku Oyasin. And it means all my relatives. And that doesn't mean just the people, it means everything. Every leaf, every breath of wind, every rainbow, every drop of water, every deer, every little tiny mouse, all of it is all of us. And I welcome everyone into this space.
Thank you so much, Jo. Thank you for bringing that immediate sense of greater intimacy with all that is, so that we can lean into it with you. Atossa, I'm just wondering if you could possibly welcome Patricia, because I can't speak her language, and let her know that she's so welcome here.
Thank you so much. Claire dice a Patricia, bienvenida a la llamada. Quiere darles la bienvenida a ti. Estás en mute.
Gracias. Disculpen el atraso, pero a veces estos equipos no son mi mejor, no soy experta en eso. Muchísimas gracias, un honor para mí estar acá.
She says, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. My equipment doesn't always, these technologies don't always work properly, but I'm here, I made it.
We're so grateful. Thank you. So, so there is so much that none of us know about what's going on in the lives of Indigenous peoples, full stop, before we bring in the realities of a pandemic. And the pandemic has been, I think, so all-consuming for so many of us where we are, that in a way we've been incredibly centered on our own lives and what's going on, and actually what we need to be doing at this time is opening up and understanding the impact that it's having around the world, because so much of that is not actually being expressed. So Jo, I'm going to open it up to you to just start wherever it feels true for you in terms of we're here simply to listen and to learn and to understand. So what's happening?
The very first, well, it was a little bit mid-March. Of course, this pandemic is rising, and I'm home because I do admit that I live in the privilege to be able to stay home in this, and I understand that there are many who cannot. But as I live in Utah, not in South Dakota where my tribe is, and as the Navajo brothers and sisters began to die, I said, I will not stand here and let them die and do nothing. And I began to sew masks, which connected me with Tyrone Whitehorse, who was doing masks for elders. And from there, in just a couple short months, we blossomed into a nonprofit organization that is providing PPE to personal protective equipment to hospitals, and also to the communities. And we are protecting the elders. The elders all, I feel like it's probably true for all Indigenous people that are here, that our elders are everything to us. They carry the knowledge and the wisdom of the people. And so they hold our past. But one thing that we don't say often is they also hold our future. Without them, without their wisdom, without their guidance, we don't know which way to go. And then we won't be able to go where we are supposed to. And in doing that, we lose our way, we lose part of ourselves in the process. So saving them is everything. And so everything that we're doing is all aimed at that, all of it. But it also means taking care of the other generations. Also, we have provided food and hand sanitizer and just so many things. We have this huge outreach. And we started on Navajo because they were in trouble. With COVID, generally speaking, with Native Americans, you're likely to be 10 times more likely to get it and 4 times more likely to die from it. But the numbers are higher in many places, like on Navajo, and perhaps on some of the other places a little bit lower, but not by much. And that's on or off the reservation, which is an interesting thing. What COVID has done is ripped the cover off of the people of the world not seeing what's happening to all the Indigenous people. It goes back hundreds of years, and the colonizers and what the laws that have been passed, being herded into reservations, and we end up with the inability to eat healthy food because we live in the middle of nowhere and you can't get healthy food that you can afford. And with that poor nutrition comes a lot of diseases, diabetes, obesity, cancer, autoimmune diseases, and all of that underlying health problems is part of the reason why natives are dying. Some of it, like on the Navajo reservation, up to 40% of the people don't have running water, no electricity, no cell phone reception. There are third world countries in Africa that have better cell phone reception than we do on Navajo, the Navajo people. And probably something that is very relevant to where we are in this space. The Navajo elders have said that COVID arose out of the ashes of the Australian bushfires. So bringing together that climate change, that destruction, that sense that, yes, we are all connected, and what is happening in other places affects us also. So we are, with Protect Native Elders, we are intertribal. So we are serving tribes all over the United States, also Canada. We've also been sending supplies to a tribe that straddles Arizona and Mexico. We serve all Indigenous people who reach out, and we do as much as we possibly can. And we've been able to do things that are literally life-saving. Without water, you can't wash your hands. No running water. You can't wash your hands for 20 seconds. That's a ridiculous waste of water that you need. So hand sanitizer becomes life-saving. When you live in intergenerational homes, as many Indigenous people do, part of it is traditional. Part of it is lack of affordable and available housing. So very few people want to live with 15 people in a small trailer. They would prefer to spread out a little bit, but that's not really feasible on probably more than 90% of the reservations in the US. So pretty high numbers in terms of that. So hand sanitizer again, and wearing a mask can make all the difference in keeping health. There's no way to isolate or quarantine one person. There is no privilege that gives you a room and a bathroom by yourself. It just doesn't happen on the reservation. It's nearly unheard of. And it's just rising really fast. Like the rest of America is taking a deep breath, but across the reservations, COVID is rising quickly. Rosebud went from 3 cases to 45, and the first death of an elder in 2 weeks. It just runs like wildfire through some of the reservations. And we have very poor health care because it's a federal program in the United States, and it is the least funded of all federal healthcare programs. Less money, sometimes less than a half, sometimes less than an entire. It can be as much as like $3,000 to $4,000 when they might be spending $8,000 to $9,000 per federal prisoner. We are at the bottom, Medicaid, Medicare, and it's always been that way. It leaves us with not enough hospitals, poorly staffed because there's not enough money, poorly equipped because there's not enough money. And so on Rosebud, the life expectancy is 57 years, 57. And tuberculosis is endemic across the reservations. I know people that have tuberculosis. I know people that have died from it. And people say, they have tuberculosis in America? It's like, look next door. You know, they haven't seen us. We're invisible. We're invisible in the statistics. Right now with the COVID cases and COVID deaths, many of the states are choosing to put Native American cases in other. We are othered. So there are no reliable statistics for how bad it is, except if you go to the reservations themselves and ask how many cases are there. And it both breaks my heart to do this work and gives me such, I don't know if joy is the right word. What I say is I feel the ancestors around me. They are guiding me on this golden path. And when we reach an impasse, there comes into our hands another golden ribbon, and we take it and we weave it into the road and we continue to follow it. And it has been one of the most spiritual journeys I've ever taken in my life. And there is no doubt that I was born to be here today to do what I'm doing. And I have the joy to be able to work with other loving and kind people. And every day it is amazing to me, the things that happen. If you want a small example, like we are kind of having a hard time with cloth masks as we've lost one of our largest suppliers. So a phone call comes and they're like, we'd like to donate a semi-truck of fabric to you where you only pay shipping. And so now all of a sudden we're going to be able to get fabric and other materials into the hands of the natives so they can sew masks for their own communities instead of needing to take charity from outside. So we are really excited to, it doesn't mean we don't need other masks, but we love the idea of people being able to serve their own communities. And it has been amazing, just an amazing journey.
Jo, thank you. I am astonished, horrified, profoundly humbled, more than anything, just aware that the majority of people in this world have no idea. Not about COVID at all, but not about the circumstances that are true on the reservations, not about how, we may know something about the genocides, we may know something about the roaring injustices, but very few people have any conception of the state that Native American peoples are forced to live in on a daily basis. I was going to ask you about why 10% more likely to get it, but you illustrated it so brilliantly. You've been pushed off the map. You've spoken so coherently and succinctly to the whole picture of it. Which I am so, so grateful for. There are questions coming in. This one, how can we institute change for the support of the native tribes and increase money going to the reservations? Is this federal or local? I want to let everybody know that we will be sharing all the links. I mean, most of the links are going to be on the webpage that this call is hooked to, but we're going to do everything we can to get the information out so that you know what you're doing. It's incredible to me to hear that you are, thank God for you, Jo, and thank God you've managed to get this going so swiftly. And also that you're working across tribes, across, just simply doing what's needed and just being in service. Because right now it feels like what's needed more than ever is the holding of hands, the recognizing that there actually are no divides, and that what's going to bring us out of this is profound levels of solidarity. So how do we wake the world up? How do we stop this farce of lack of funding and lack of acknowledgement? Like what's to be done? What can we do?
Well, it is federal. Each nation, each federally recognized tribe has a sovereignty over where they live. So according to my tribe, we have our own laws that rule the people in the area, don't apply to the white people, but it also means the colonizer laws don't apply to us on the reservation unless they're federal. So if a crime happens, it has to be addressed federally. So the FBI would come in to investigate a crime because the state police don't have anything. And so going to your federal representatives and saying this is not okay, being astonished and horrified that Indian Health Services, also known as IHS, are so poorly funded, go in astonishment and horrifying to your representatives and say, I'm not okay with this. What are you going to do about it? Why don't the Navajo have their own water? Why is their water all tainted with uranium so that everybody on the reservation there has high uranium levels in their bodies, including newborn babies? It's like it was poisoned by companies. They cannot use their regular water because it is poisoned by the uranium. And there also is arsenic in the water, but they don't have paved roads. And it's so large that it makes it really difficult to get around. And there are so many people working for good. Everybody on the reservations, it's true of Indigenous people in general, I believe. It is community before self. And that holds true everywhere. There are Navajos helping Navajos, Hopi helping Hopi, Lakota helping Lakota. And so I say, for me, follow your heart. Where does your passion lie? Is there a light that says, I want to do this, I want to provide food, or I want to provide cloth masks, I want to give money. I say follow your heart. If you need more information, there's always that available. And just, if you follow that light, you will find where you belong and what you're supposed to be doing. It's been placed within you for a reason.
Thank you, Jo. There's another question here. Are there any bills in the US House or Senate that could help the conditions of the Native nations, especially those on the reservations? If not, would you like to write a bill and we could look for legislators to support it? She's saying maybe it's temporary funding, or maybe it's something more substantial and long lasting.
Right. Well, right now we actually have Native American Congress people like Deb Haaland. So absolutely contacting the Native congressional people. And now I wish I had all the names and addresses, but I'm sure that's available if you look up the Native ones. And yes, they are absolutely fighting for Native rights. And so addressing them would be very helpful.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm just agreeing with some of these things that we have coming in here. It's just quite a dance for me. I apologize going through the chat and the Q&A. I'm just going to come back to the Q&A here. Anya says, I want to ask humbly if there are activities to share the wisdom and knowledge of the already existing NGOs, and as far as they are already helping organizations to work together. How do the different grandmothers worldwide work together in creating not only a donation? Jo, does that land with you as a question? Can you find your way inside of that? Or it's a bit confusing to me?
It is confusing to me also. I'm not clear about what's being asked.
No, I'm not either. Well, I'm also aware that time is moving on, and we're really wanting to hold space for everybody here. We need to actually shift to Atossa and Patricia here. We will have space at the end, and I will try harder to manage all the different questions coming in. I think one of the things that I'm very aware of out of this section, Jo, is that there are actually concrete actions we need to take. We can be sending money, which is really what you need. That again is all on the webpage. More importantly, we need to be making our voices heard, all of us. And this is across the board. It's like we need to be writing to those people who are not taking appropriate action to just say this is not acceptable. You know, it is just not acceptable. And it's not about writing one letter, it's about writing multiple letters, and it's about taking action. So, you know, for me, it's like, can we let the righteous rage have its way with us in a way that we can't just go, oh, wow, and then just carry on with our lives. Like, our lives now, if we're here, have to be committed to changing the system that perpetuates dominant suppression and the poisoning of people. The fact that if you look at every flipping Indian reservation in this country, it is next to horrible military sites or mines, or that mining is happening, you know, on the land. It's like that the land is not seen as sacred. In fact, it's seen as the opposite of sacred. It's a place where you can go and rape and pillage, not just the land. It's happening to the peoples too. And that will go on for as long as we all condone it. So this is about a serious call to stop the appalling ongoing. It's an ongoing genocide, actually. It is, especially now when you look at COVID and what's going on. So thank you so much, Jo, for what you're doing. And I'm thrilled that you're here. And I'm so excited to be able to get your knowledge further out in the world. And we'll continue to try and figure out how to do that. Oh, my goodness. So Atossa, beloved Atossa, who is one of the single gutsiest women I know on this planet. She's been a forest activist for 3 decades. She is the founder of Amazon Watch. One of these days you need to hear from her how that happened. It's an extraordinary story. And she's recently co-created and launched the Amazon Emergency Fund. Atossa, I'm just going to hand straight over to you. Please just step straight in with what you need everybody to know.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's an honor to be here. And Jo, thank you so much for all of the ways that you wove together the key issues that are facing Native peoples in the US. You can basically say the same things are happening exactly in the Amazon basin. And yeah, it's a very alarming, I'm very concerned about what's happening. And I just yesterday got message that one of the chiefs that I spent some time with in the Brazilian Amazon, in the Arara, Zé Carlos Arara from the Arara people in Brazil, a place where I took James Cameron from around the time of the movie Avatar. We visited this village that was the lead for the fight against the Belamonte Dam. Anyway, he passed away yesterday and just broke my heart. And every day there are more news of people we know and love, and many people we don't, but that are facing this COVID emergency. We were already in an emergency in the Amazon since the fires last August, since Bolsonaro coming in, since the crisis of deforestation has been elevated since last August. It's, you know, we were already in a state of emergency. We were already talking about how we're going to escalate the unity and the work that we need to do to, you know, stop deforestation when COVID hit. So it's been a real challenge. It's been, you know, we've been talking about the Amazon as a, you know, as a united front, indigenous movements coming together to coordinate, to monitor, to track what's happening, to be able to demand that their governments attend to the real needs of indigenous peoples in this emergency. And then also just to reflect on the fact that while we are all in lockdown and are shutting down a lot of the activity that's the day-to-day activity, what we're seeing in the Amazon is that the actual pandemic and the lockdown has led to a drop in, complete drop in enforcement of laws and lawfulness. And so what you have is a rise in lawlessness. You have, you know, basically a rise in illegal logging and illegal gold miners and land grabbers and cattle ranchers, and people are building illegal roads and invading indigenous people's territories. And every single week there are news of also murders, people being, literally indigenous people being murdered by, you know, just shot dead, assassinated, who are leading their communities in this fight for the forest. So it's a dark times, but, you know, I think that, you know, like the crisis of the Amazon the fires in the Amazon, you know, the lungs of the earth, it's just, you know, reflecting on the fact that, you know, now the human lungs are being affected. This disease is now hurting people. So I just want to keep my comments short because I know I really want everyone to hear from Patricia Gualinga. I'll just close by saying, in the face of this pandemic, there is a growing movement of indigenous peoples and NGOs and artists and scientists coming together to draw the line, to say we've got to work together. We're unifying in several ways. We've launched the Amazon Emergency Fund on May 5th, and we're raising money, and 100% of the money we're raising is going directly to indigenous organizations in the Amazon to address things like the same things that, you know, we heard Jo talk about, masks, prevention, evacuation to the nearest health facilities, which there are not many, rapid testing, because up till recent, and even as recently as 2 weeks ago, one of my colleagues in the Amazon had COVID, and he was tested, but it took 8 days for the test to get back. How many people do you think were, you know, in that 8 days affected by one person, not knowing that they have COVID? So we are dealing with the need for rapid testing. We're also needing to protect indigenous territories from invaders, from outsiders. And we're calling for a moratorium on deforestation, on all activities, on extractive activities, on gold mining, on oil drilling. So what people can do is go to amazonemergencyfund.org, join us, make a contribution, no matter how small or large. It'll go directly to the front lines. Help us with signing the declaration. There's a declaration calling for a moratorium. It's dedicated at the governments of the Amazon countries. So join us in this fight. I think that it's a dark time, but it's also an opportunity to unite, to see ourselves as, you know, part of a living earth, which is the indigenous cosmology, to see ourselves as part of the living earth, of which, you know, the Gaia is planet is alive as we know it, and the Amazon is a vital organ of the planet, and it's the heart and the lungs of the planet. It's a vital organ, and that we have to connect as we connect with our own hearts, with the heart of the planet, and we have to see ourselves as cells in a body that's alive, and every cell in your body knows what to do to keep you alive. And in the same way, we need to become aware that we are also cells, every one of us, no matter whether we're in California or in Brazil. We are cells in the body of a living earth, and we have to unite and be in coherence with life. And so I will stop there. I just want to say I'll come back for questions, but I want to give more time to Patricia. Patricia Gualinga is one of my heroes. I've been working with her for over about 15 years, and she comes from the indigenous Quechua people of Sarayaku, one of the bright lights in the Amazon, and her extraordinary leadership as a leader, as a spokesperson for her people and for women in the Amazon. She's been a lead organizer of the women's movement in the Amazon, of indigenous women. She's gone to the United Nations, to the Vatican. She's spoken in front of corporate shareholder meetings. Her people have successfully defended and stopped oil extraction in their territories. And she's one of my personal heroes. Her family, I'm very close to, have spent a lot of time in her community. So without further ado, I'm gonna ask her, Patricia Gualinga. Estoy dando un poco resumen de ti. Quiero invitarte a entrar en este momento y te traduzco, si podemos hablar partes pequeños que puedo traducir. Bienvenida, Patricia.
Muchas gracias, Atossa. Gracias a los organizadores de las Hermanas del Árbol. Realmente estamos viviendo tiempos muy complejos, tiempos de mucha reflexión, tiempos de cambios que tenemos que realizarlos nosotros, porque si no lo hacemos, son tiempos que pueden ser demasiado dolorosos.
Thank you so much for having me here, Tree Sisters. Thank you to all of you. Like I want to share, like it's been shared, we're living in a very difficult time. These are very challenging times. It's a time for change. It's a time for transformation. And unless we recognize this moment in time in the change that we need to make, we're going to face a great deal of pain. It's going to become a painful time.
Lo digo así porque cuando llegó el COVID, aparecieron otras situaciones también graves, como inundaciones en los pueblos indígenas, hambre a causa de las inundaciones, la enfermedad del COVID, el dengue, que es también otro virus de acá de selva tropical, y desde ayer está erupcionando un volcán. Por eso digo que son tiempos totalmente complejos que tenemos que tratar de entender.
I say this because this is the complex time. This is a very difficult time because when COVID appeared, it appeared at the same time as a bunch of other situations. For example, we had COVID happened at the same time as there were floods, record rainfall and floods that wiped out food systems in the area. And with that came hunger. And then also this is just in March, actually, she's speaking of. With that came hunger. With that came disease and diseases. And those diseases were not just COVID, they were also dengue, epidemics of dengue, which is another tropical disease. And what we are now seeing is, this forest is basically in crisis. As of yesterday, we had an eruption of our volcano, the volcano near our territory.
Entonces,
so all of these things are showing this complex time.
Entonces, los pueblos indígenas no están viviendo una sola emergencia, están viviendo múltiples emergencias en estos momentos. Y todos parecen haberse juntados, todos parecen haberse puesto de acuerdo inevitablemente Y esto ha visibilizado realmente la situación que vivían desde antes los pueblos indígenas en mayor magnitud. El abandono del Estado central, la invisibilización, porque para los pueblos indígenas no ha habido alcohol, no ha habido jabón, no ha habido máscaras para protegerse, y en estos momentos están infectados también.
It seems like all of these forces are converging and they're related. All of these things are making it an inevitable multiple disasters at the same time. So on the one hand, that's what's happening. On the other hand, this is a crisis with 500 years of colonization and manifest destiny, where we're seeing indigenous peoples are invisible. We are invisible in front of the state. There is no state presence. There's no, we've been abandoned by our governments. We are basically maintaining not only invisible, but we're not being attended to. So there is no such thing as, for example, sanitizers or alcohol or masks or testing in our territories, not even soap. And so all of a sudden we're in this place of being overcome by the COVID emergency.
Realmente estamos preocupados por esta infección del COVID y todo lo que está sucediendo, porque ya hay muertes de gente indígena. Algunos ancianos ya han fallecido. Ahorita estamos trabajando, gestionando pruebas para ver a cuántos indígenas ha alcanzado el COVID, tratando de ver cómo respondemos a esta realidad, pero también conscientes de que toda esta situación conjunta se debe a que transgredimos las leyes naturales de cuidar nuestra naturaleza, no solamente amazónica, sino la naturaleza global.
So we are now facing this COVID emergency, and it's basically our elders are dying. A lot of people are affected. People are being, being affected and catching the disease. For this reason, we're working hard to bring prevention and to bring testing. We really need to know how fast this is spreading and who has it. The reality is, basically that this reality is coinciding with all of these other things that are happening in the world. And we have to look at that. All the other things that are happening to our people in our area, all these other disasters are related. And they show that they're happening because we have violated the laws of nature. We have violated the laws of the origin, that we are in the process of, I'm not just talking about the laws of the origin as it relates to us in the Amazon. I'm talking about the impact we've had on life and on the entire planet, on the global earth, on the globe as a whole, and how we have affected nature, and now we are being affected by her.
Realmente esta situación es preocupante, porque donde los pueblos indígenas no hay centros médicos, no hay medicina, no hay oxígeno, no hay una atención. Y en caso de que la pandemia avance con tanta fuerza como lo está haciendo, podría ser desastroso, podría ser una extinción en esta era. Y eso nos preocupa muchísimo a nosotros, a todos.
Yeah, so we are very concerned. We must address this pandemic. COVID is spreading, and in our territories, it's spreading fast. And in our territories, we have no means of resisting it. We don't have medicines. We don't have oxygen. We don't have, access to medical care even. Definitive medical care is very far. And we don't have the, we need basically to rise together to address this issue, because if not, it could become incredibly tragic. We could face basically extermination. We could face mass extermination of our people, and that is a huge concern.
Muchos pueblos huyeron a los bosques 3 meses, pensando que ya se iba a acabar esta pandemia. Se les acabó los fósforos, la sal, algunas cosas que ellos necesitaban, y están retornando a los pueblos. Son otros tiempos, pero lo bueno de esta pandemia también es que los pueblos confiaron en sus plantas tradicionales, en su medicina tradicional, en sus hojas, en sus cortezas, en sus lianas, y eso les está ayudando. Esa es la medicina que tienen a la mano. Volvieron a recordar sus conocimientos.
So yeah, so basically, in addition to all of this that's happening, that's disastrous, there's been also some good that we have seen emerge in this process. Indigenous peoples retreated to their territories, and they've been there for 3 months now, and that's been, for the most part, good, although they're starting to run out of basic things that they don't have in their territories, like even salt or matches. But so there's some of them having to come back out of their territories. But the good things that have emerged is that people are returning to their territories, seeking their own traditional plant medicines, returning to their traditional knowledge of how to deal with diseases. Their leaves, their vines, going back to the cuttings of the plant medicines that they're able to prepare, reviving the traditional knowledge systems, and in this way valuing their own traditional culture, and that's been one of the positive aspects.
Confían mucho más en su conocimiento que en los médicos en estos momentos. Y después de que perdieron más del 80% de sus cultivos, se han puesto a sembrar sus alimentos. Aunque demorarán meses, ellos están preveyendo, están luchando, haciendo frente a esta dura realidad. Es increíble pensar que nosotros, los pueblos, que estamos luchando todo el tiempo, hablando del cuidado de la naturaleza, también seamos los que estamos en la primera línea de todo el cambio climático, las consecuencias del cambio climático, y que lo estemos sintiendo en carne propia.
So Indigenous peoples are becoming more confident, developing more confidence in their own knowledge systems. They're returning to their traditional ways through this pandemic at this very short term. Although the floods have wiped out 80% of their crops, the floods have literally wiped out people's crops, they're still determined to be self-reliant in their food system. So they're returning to planting their traditional crops, although it's going to take some months for that to become available. They're suffering through that difficulty of scarcity, but it's incredible to see what the people are doing and how they're returning home in a way. But also, it's also really important to point out that here, the Indigenous people who espouse our philosophy about protecting the earth and are connected to nature are also the first ones in the front lines of the climate change disasters, our impacts of climate change, that more disastrous weather patterns, that we're now in the front line suffering the consequences of that.
Nos preocupa que la sociedad occidental, las industrias y los gobiernos no estén aprendiendo de esta situación compleja, que continúen abriendo fronteras extractivas como el petróleo, la minería, las agroindustrias, las hidroeléctricas, y que no estén conscientes de que todo este modelo que armaron está pasándonos factura y está tratando de decirnos que ya debemos parar.
So it's unfortunate, though, our governments haven't been learning this lesson. They're not necessarily taking note. They're in this pandemic, rather than reflecting on this entire model, they're going back and really, instead of looking for the lessons, they're going back into the same old, pushing forward projects of extractivism, pushing forward oil drilling and mining and hydroelectric dams and destructive agribusiness in these forests. It's not like they're taking note of the facts and creating, as getting together and thinking solutions for this transformation. They're using business as usual.
Nosotros volvemos a reiterar como pueblos indígenas, como pueblos arayaku, de que tiene que haber respeto, de que todos estamos interligados, de que nadie del otro existe sin el otro, que la naturaleza, la selva, es un ser vivo, consciente, sujeto de derecho, y que tenemos que volver a reaprender esa nueva forma de relación con la naturaleza, porque ese es el camino.
For us, the people of Sarayaku, our message is that we are all interconnected and we are all interdependent, that we have to look at the forest as a living forest, that we are, is subject to rights, is a subject of rights, that we have to return to our harmonious relationship and coexistence with nature, that for us it is about this harmony and this interrelationship to nature. That is our message. And that we all deserve respect, and we all deserve respect, and we have rights.
Tiene que haber respeto para esos ecosistemas primarios que nosotros lo estemos cuidando, porque de ahí fluye la vida para el equilibrio del planeta Tierra. La destrucción de esos ojos que nutren de vida al planeta, que equilibran el planeta, aquellos espacios vitales que hacen que haya una verdadera regeneración, tienen que ser cuidados a perpetuidad. Eso no se puede destruir.
We must respect these primary ecosystems, these incredible forests. We must stop the destruction of these incredibly important sources of life for the entire planet. These places are spaces for life that provide nutrition, that cultivate and nourish life on this planet. These are vital places that have to be protected in perpetuity, and that we must be seen as part of the balance for the entire planet, vital for the entire life on this earth.
La destrucción de la Amazonía, la destrucción del Ártico, la destrucción del Congo, cualquiera de estos lados que destruyan, o de Australia, es la destrucción de la humanidad. Si destruyen el Amazonas, habrá la humanidad perdido, y eso no lo podemos permitir. Por eso estamos unidos, porque si destruyen eso, destruyen a la humanidad. Muchos cometen el error de pensar que la lucha es de los pueblos indígenas, que estamos luchando solo por nuestros derechos. Hay que pensar que los pueblos indígenas luchamos por el derecho de toda la humanidad, por el derecho de los hijos de todos ustedes, de los empresarios, de los gobiernos, de aquellos que no creen en nuestra visión. Por ellos es nuestra lucha.
It's important to recognize that the destruction of planetary systems is a destruction that we must stop. For example, not the destruction of the Amazon, but the Arctic, the destruction of the Congo, the destruction of Australian forest, an attack on any of these systems, on life on the planet. That in this way that we must recognize, many people think that we're just fighting for indigenous peoples. We must recognize that we're not fighting for just for indigenous peoples. The fight for these ecosystems, the planetary fight is the fight for all of humanity. It's a struggle for all of our future generations. And that it is also, even the governments need to get on aligned with this message. It is also for all of our, it's a message that all governments must take into heart and see themselves as really protectors of this larger system for all of life, for all of humanity.
Entonces,
we're going to need to move on. We're going to need to move to Jyoti just so that everybody gets a chance to speak. Please, could you tell Patricia that it is a vast privilege to have her here, that I wish we could listen to her for hours, that I'm going to see if there's a way that we can bring her back and get an expanded audience. And that we've heard her message loud and clear, and we're going to keep digging to try and find all the different ways that we can help.
Patricia, Claire dice que es un gran privilegio, gran honor tenerte aquí, y ella está reconociendo que el tiempo es corto, que hay otras personas también, pero ella le gustaría invitarte a un programa específico contigo para que su voz y su mensaje sea más profundamente discutido, que entramos en más profundo en este conocimiento que estás compartiendo, que es un gran honor estar aquí contigo, y ella le gustaría invitarte para otro programa con más tiempo. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Solo quería decir que todos somos hermanas y hermanos, y por lo tanto todos estamos en la obligación de luchar. Muchísimas gracias.
But I just want to end by saying we're all brothers and sisters. We're all united, and we all have the privilege and the important need to come together and unite and fight together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. And Atossa, thank you for your soul deep roar that will not allow for the continuation of this, and for how your life has been put forward. Thank you so much for stepping in and creating this fund. I'm really hoping everybody here is fully letting in the reality that this pandemic is being held by the Indigenous peoples of these places as something that could seriously wipe them out. It's that serious. This is not something we can just go, oh, how interesting, I'm learning something about the Amazon. We cannot lose, not just these forests, the peoples of these forests hold the knowledge that is pretty much all that can bring humanity back from the edge of complete self-annihilation. Like, unless we protect these peoples who understand how to live in reciprocity, we're not just going to pluck that knowledge out of thin air. Like, it's embodied in these peoples. And I so hear you, Jo, when you talk about the elders, and it's desperately gutting to hear. And of course, it's the elders that are being wiped out, and they can't be. It's like, we have got to all just start putting our money where our mouth is and supporting the people who are on the front lines doing something about this. So I'm just going to keep calling for us to just step in, step in, step in. If you think you've done enough, you haven't. Not all of us. So thank you, Atossa. I'm now going to introduce Jyoti, who is also going to introduce her guest, Alexis. Jyoti Ma is an internationally renowned spiritual teacher. She's the grandmother vision keeper of the Center for Sacred Studies. She has helped convene the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers and the Unity Consciousness, the Unity Concert, apologies. She's also the founder of the Fountain and part of the Mother Earth delegation of United Indigenous Nations. Jyoti, again, thank you so much for being here. I know, again, you are another, huge vision holder. You're another being who never stops, who just keeps relentlessly figuring out what's needed and then putting your body straight into that place. I have, again, such gratitude for you. And I just want to just step in and jump in exactly wherever you need to be.
Thank you so much, Claire. And I could say the same back to you, when we first met in Ecuador, and your light so brightly shined, I wanted to sit by it and learn more. So thank you for bringing me into this circle and inviting not only myself, but my community of 30 plus years that has helped carry everything that we've done all these years forward. I'm a grandmother, and my elders used to say to me, if the grandmother's heart is not on the ground, then there's still hope in the air. And this grandmother's heart is not on the ground. And these grandmothers that I hear sharing here today, our hearts are not on the ground. In fact, what I see happening around the planet is grandmothers are standing up in a fierceness, with a fierceness and a love and a commitment for life and with life that's unbroken and will continue to be so. So I want to say everything you're hearing here today is a truth. What the coronavirus has done is, if you step back and look at it, it's made us look at truth. It's made us have to see where the divisions are and where the places are that we've been blinded or are kept in some dark place, rather than bringing all into the light and into the sun so it could grow healthy, it could nurture. There is a war on nature. There is a war on nature like never been seen before. What's being reported in this circle this morning is some of what that effect has upon the original roots of this tree of life that has brought life and shared life so generously from its original times. The Mother Earth is in her sixth extinction. She knows how to go through this process. She will carry us through it if we will but listen. So what happened is that if you can stop and look too, you can see that there are amazing things in the middle of the intensity, in the middle of the suffering and the pain of it all. There is something rising out of that, that is what's going forward. As my Kogi elders have shared with me and my community several years ago, the ending is falling down into the beginning, and the beginning will roll out in 2026. And so we're in that moment of the great turning, of the great change. So we've got to be honest with ourselves about what we're participating in. And she's got everything, this Mother Earth, she's got everything waiting for us if we'll wake up and see it and embrace it and walk with her. In London last summer, there was what I'm calling the SEED delegation that came together in a summit called the Flourishing Diversity Summit in London. There were 27 plus of us delegates that had been invited there. And on the third morning of it, we found out that 2.5 tons of radioactive waters had been poured into the ocean, and that more fires have been set in the Amazon. And I have had some remarkable experiences through my 73 years. But this one far outweighed them all, for I felt the Mother take a bolt of lightning and throw it into this cup, a small cup of people from many nations. And I saw the unification stand up inside of us, unquestioning. And I saw that what she said that day was, you must declare your solidarity. And you must restore the original caretaker roles to their territories. We must do that now. If you look at what has been said about the coronavirus, you know, the fires move through the lungs of the earth, and now the coronavirus is moving through our lungs. She unplugged us, and when she plugs us back in, there will be a moment of recalibration that will go on, I have been told. And that recalibration is about bringing us all back to that original line with our Mother Earth. All nations unified and standing in that line with Mother Earth to listen to her instruction, for the economies and the resources to get behind our First Nation people, our original peoples on this planet, the caretakers of these territories that are keeping us all alive as a species, to get behind that direction with everything we've got. Because what can we do? When we see that Mother Earth is giving us a reflection through our own bodies of where she's living right now in hers, then let us put our concentration on fueling that which will make her healthy, that will restore her systems, that will allow her sacred sites to be reactivated so her entire system can open and breathe again. She's sending this message through every possible way she can, even through right now in this nation of this United States, when everyone here of the Black nation is saying, I can't breathe. This is a moment when we must understand where we have come and that we are in a moment of ending. And now we must focus on our beginning. And it will happen when we sit with our humility and open and unfreeze our hearts so we can feel what is happening to the roots of this culture. We must tend to the roots of this culture. I pray that we can listen in this moment, because there are a number listening, and there will be a movement to that new era, that new dawn. As my elders say, the prophecies have told us how to prepare for the new dawn that is coming, and now the new dawn is here. So I just want to leave that much kind of a feeling as I get to go in now and introduce Alexis Bunten. She's Yupik. She's one of the delegates that came forward because we're in the middle of a making for ourselves. We came out of London when we heard this, And the delegation there said to myself and Loretta Afraid Bear Cook and to Arena Rose, that was the Maori that called this delegation into action, that we must carry this forward. And so we were on our way to Stockholm in March of this year when all of this came. So we are still in the makings of ourselves, wanting to listen to Mother Earth and to really give her voice prominence. And so Alexis is coming because she's been on the ground. She's working with Bioneers. She's working with many Indigenous nations. She's run a survey to really see where they're sitting, where they're standing in themselves and with themselves. And she can lend much more of that detail to the story of understanding where we are so we'll know where we need to go. So Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. It's nice to see you, Jyoti. Thank you for the wonderful introduction to how we came to know each other. And I want to let everybody know, first of all, thank you for inviting me to Tree People. I am a huge fan of Tree People. I love what you could do. I went to grad school at UCLA. And when I learned about what you were doing in LA, oh, just a sec. Say hi.
Next generation.
Oh, she doesn't know she's on mute. Tara, are you able to unmute?
To pause it.
Okay.
So when we start it
Sorry,
again and
one
turn
sec.
it on
Yeah.
again.
Sweetie, you have to
you
ask
can
your
see
dad.
what button I pressed, and he said, "Wait till mommy's meeting is done."
He said, wait till mommy's meeting is done. It'll be done in half an hour, sweetheart. Thank you. I love you. Anyway, big fan of Tree People. I love what you do. So it's very much an honor to be here today with you. And I'm calling from the ancestral territory of the Rumsen Ohlone, today known as Monterey, California. And actually a little town called Delray Oaks, California, right next to Monterey. And I co-direct the indigeneity program at Bioneers, but I also kind of moonlight as a mixed methods research consultant, among other things. So when the pandemic first hit our continent, I immediately went into research mode, and I knew that we would need to shift our programming maybe for a long time and have a response to COVID. So I created a survey that I sent out to and was filled out by 16 partner organizations. And I asked a knowledgeable representative from each partner organization to respond in relation to the Native families and Indigenous families they serve. And between those 16 respondents, they represent hundreds of families from all over the country. However, we have a bigger focus on the West Coast and the West in general. But then it also became more of a mixed methods, I guess you could call it research endeavor, because we realized that we at Bioneers wanted to do some grassroots COVID relief immediately. So Nina Simons, who many of you probably know, really did a lot of great work helping to spearhead this and work closely with me alongside Cara Romero. And we called, I mean, just myself alone, I've probably talked to 60, 70 people, and also rechecks with people, rechecks with partners, asking what's happening, what's the new, what's going on. So that's kind of the qualitative, if you want to use research language, that's kind of the qualitative side of the research that I've been doing. And so I aggregated the survey responses, which I'm going to share with you. And then I also aggregated what I'd been hearing on the ground from people into different areas of trends that I see. And one overarching thing that I do want to stress about the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on Indigenous communities is that urban Indigenous people are getting hit just as hard as people living in rural areas. And in fact, in the cities, I mean, we're often just completely forgotten or not included in people's thoughts or COVID relief efforts. So I've been paying just a careful attention to people in urban areas than rural areas. And I was surprised and kind of pleased to learn actually that in my region in Southwest Alaska and many other parts of Alaska where I have friends and family, they really haven't been hit at all because they've been very, very carefully monitoring people coming in and out of the communities and immediately quarantining people in schools. So they've managed to avoid it thus far, which is amazing because we still get things like TB outbreaks and hepatitis outbreaks in our villages in Alaska. So I think I guess we're kind of used to it up there. So as you know, and I really apologize, I missed the first half of the call. It's probably already been mentioned that due to lack of infrastructure and just the white supremacist nature of the USA, obviously Black and brown people are being affected so much more and in different ways than by COVID-19 than other communities who are more privileged. And I read a really great saying yesterday in a Harvard Business Review article that said, when white people get a cold, Black people get pneumonia. And I think that is just the best metaphor for the way and Black communities. So I'm going to start to share some of the top line results of this survey work I've been doing. Also, I have an unstable internet connection. You may have noticed that it completely went out 15 minutes ago. So if you lose me, I'll come back on this or I'll swing from my phone or something. So the top line findings that I found, I found that nearly 75% of families represented by the survey takers organizations are experiencing some form of food insecurity. And just talking to people, I learned that a lot of food banks that people might normally have access to in urban and rural areas were just shut down, especially during the middle of this crisis. And kind of more word of mouth I heard a story about a grandmother who was taking care of 11 grandkids, most of whom moved in after the crisis hit. And she couldn't go to the store she was on a reservation in Washington State. She couldn't go to the store because she couldn't take 11 kids to the store during the quarantine. So a lot of food insecurity. Nearly 60% of the families represented among the survey takers organizations were having difficulty accessing necessary supplies. So we consider supplies things like gas, medical equipment, school equipment, safe water, and particularly the Navajo and Hopi reservations, just water at all, because a lot of homes don't have running water there. And now that was 60% who said they were having trouble, but 30% of the survey takers said they didn't know the answer to that question. Only 10% said that they thought that families were doing okay. 10% of families were doing okay accessing necessary supplies. I also forgot to add that I kept this survey, I launched it March 13th and I shut it down May 15th. So that was the time period for this data, pertaining to this data. When I asked the survey takers what kinds of specific things would support Native families in an open-ended question, people, they gave the following responses. And this is in no particular order, but what could help is food, both pantry items and fresh fruits and vegetables, cleaning supplies and sanitizers, toiletries, technology came up huge, and I'll talk more about that later. School supplies, printer, ink, pens, paper, all of it. Cultural supplies, and that could include things like items used for basket weaving. People really need a lot of those. Things like that. Beads, things, cultural supplies. Mental health and suicide prevention support, just cash, straight up cash, money for rent, gas, bills. And also tutoring support. So I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to move into the kind of the trends I've noticed through talking to well over 50 people and in no particular order. What I've heard from a lot of people is that one-time payment that many of us got through the CARES Act to individual households are not reaching people, especially elders who live traditionally and or who live off the grid. Some tribes have been able to get the broader CARES Act funding and have been able to somewhat distribute them, but other tribes are still having trouble accessing that at a tribal nation level. In terms of financing, oh yes, and then I also have to add that many of the urban Indian populations are not able to get the support through their tribes of origin back home because they're disconnected from them or somehow not enrolled. They're really left in the dark. And in terms of finances, we see families tend to have two different scenarios going on. In one scenario, the parents or the adults in the household work, but they're in essential service jobs. So they're highly at risk of getting COVID-19, contracting, that's the word I was looking for, contracting COVID-19. And their other family members are just sanitizing. One girl told me she mops her house twice a day because her dad is an essential worker in Oakland. And just imagine how much cleaning supplies you need if you're mopping your whole house twice a day. And she's a teen. The other situation is that people have just lost their jobs, or maybe in some families, there might've been one person who was supporting many different extended family members. So when that person loses their jobs, substantially more people are hurt by the lack of money. People are really worried about paying rent and being evicted, even despite the laws around that. Let's see, what else? I mentioned that the food banks are shut down and some families can't go to the stores. You've probably heard that many tribes are shutting down roads in and out of more rural reservations and implementing additional quarantine measures. However, this is actually posed, I've seen cases in Canada, and there was recently a case, I want to say in Texas, somewhere in the Southeast, where law enforcement was trying to come in when the roads were closed, and it was posing a threat to actual tribal sovereignty, which could be dismantled at this time, and almost was, with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, who were going to have their reservation taken out of trust status. They got that news in the middle of COVID-19 after the pandemic, but I'm happy to say that last Friday, a judge ruled in their favor. But COVID-19 is literally a threat to tribal sovereignty. Transportation is a major problem. I already mentioned that a lot of reservations are trying to shut the roads going in and out.
Alexis?
Yeah.
Alexis, can you just say a little bit more about that? Can you help us understand about what you were just saying? Yeah, about how, you know, with the police coming in and actually the mechanism of that so that we can understand?
I'm not an expert on it. I've just read a couple of articles. It's a little bit hazy in my mind. But from what I understand, there was, for example, a ceremony that took place, I want to say in Manitoba or something like that. I mean, sovereignty and legal standing is a little bit different in Canada than the United States. But the RCMP came in and tried to break up a ceremony that their elders told them that they had to participate in for COVID-19 relief specifically. Jo's raising her hand. Maybe she might have something to say about it. And it was a whole standoff and a threat to sovereignty. And, but I know a lot more about the Mashpee case specifically, because I work closely with a Mashpee woman and helped get the word out about that one.
Yeah, the problem that happened was in South Dakota with the Cheyenne River tribe, and they had health checks and roadblocks on the roads to keep people from coming in. And they are federal roads. And Kristi Noem, who's the South Dakota Senator, Republican, of course, was demanding that they take it down, that they can't do that they do not have the right to sovereignty over their roads nor safety for their tribe in terms of health. And there were 17 senators that came forth and said, you can't do that. This is tribal sovereignty. and it's been a gigantic mess, but in general, it's still been upheld that Cheyenne River does have a right to keep people from coming in and out of the reservation, regardless of whether or not the roads are federal.
Thank you, Jo.
Thank you.
Alexis.
And I'm almost done. I want to make sure you have some time for questions, and I don't want to overtake my time. I believe I have 8 minutes left, right?
I think we've actually only got about 3. Let me just check.
I'll wrap in 2 and we can do questions for 1 or 2. I am almost done sharing what I've heard. I would just wanted to add this transportation issue is a huge problem. People who take public transportation in the cities don't want to do it. In the rural areas, people are having to borrow cars from each other. Roads are blocked in and out. I heard a tragic story about 2 weeks ago. A friend needed a part for his car, and on the Navajo reservation, they have to drive an hour or 2 to get to these border towns. And he had to go to Gallup to get a part for his car. Took him forever to just get a car that he could borrow to go there. And then when he got there, he was going out during the time that the Navajo reservation block to Gallup was open. But he said, this sounds crazy, but this is what he said. I made him repeat the story. He said that Gallup was blocking their road to the Navajo reservation, and they didn't communicate with the reservation. So the police there stopped him after he drove for an hour, and he had to turn back around again and start all over again. So things like this are happening. Jo's heard of this. She's nodding her head. Things like this are happening everywhere. Also, household demographic changes. A lot more family members, extended family members are moving into households, which has implications in terms of food, stress, child neglect, being able to study. And I'm just going to skip to the bit about technology now and let you ask some questions, but the students' educations are suffering. High schoolers are worried that they're going to have to drop out and get a job to help pay the bills. They're worried that they're not going to be on track to graduate on time, that they're not going to be able to come back next year. Among those I surveyed, it's about, I'm not looking at, 80% of the families don't have access to good internet at home, good enough to do this, what we're doing. I think it was 60% of the youth don't have adequate technology, like a computer, tablet, or phone in order to do their homework. And among those that do have technology, a majority of them have to share that computer or phone with 3 or more other people. So I'm actually actively raising money to buy HubSpots, buy computers and tablets for, I'm hoping like up to 150 or 350 Native youth that I'm connected to around the country. And I also want to end by saying that anybody on this call who can support any of these organizations, please do. It really, really helps. Click on the link. I'm also doing a COVID Rapid Response Fund to grassroots organizers, and I have re-granted money. Me and Nina Simons and Kara Romero and everyone at Bioneers, we've re-granted money to more than 30 individuals and organizations now, but we're just re-granting to the people who are on this call. So just help them out. So sorry if I took a little over my time. Feel free to ask any questions you have.
Please don't worry. At this point, we're gonna need to put questions at the end because we need to bring on Ruda and Haru Kuntanawa. The 13 organizations that you have, that you're connected to, Alexis, do we have a list of those? Jyoti, do you have a list of those? Obviously, Jo is also core here. I just want to make sure that we've got all the different links that we need in order to give people the fullest opportunity to give.
Those were you mean the 13 on this call, or that I was talking to?
That you were talking to.
I have a list. I have a list that includes individuals that I'm giving directly to as well, like elders. It's a little confusing. The 13 is actually, the number was 16, and I was referring to partner organizations that responded to the survey, but it's not the same overlap. Some of it is, as the organizations and individuals that we've vetted and we're giving to, but I could ask permission if I could share the organizations that are on my list that are a solid, I don't know, that we've vetted that are legit to donate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could ask permission to share that. Yeah.
And Claire,
Thank
I
you
just want
so
to
Jyoti.
I just also want to say, you know, what we're hearing today has certainly touched my heart and charged my fire. But what we're all hearing is where we're at and what we need right now, that we can just get really clear. Our foundation is raising for Indigenous communities globally, and it will flow through the hands of the delegates of the Mother Earth delegation, plus other Indigenous communities we've worked with over the last 25 years as we've been in service this way. And at the same time, there are things being galvanized right now for that new beginning that's breaking through. There are organizations and individuals that are sitting down to collaborate like never before I've seen. So there is, you know, I'm looking at some of the chat and I'm seeing that, well, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to listen and see the structures that are coming together. And just like being called to this call, there's something that'll light up in your heart, and then the weaving can begin. So I want to just encourage you to do what Jo said at the very beginning. Just go right back to your heart and trust. You know, the mother says, how do we do this? We stand in the present moment, fully in the present moment, and she'll bring everything we need to that moment. Once we embrace it, then we can walk further and be in the next moment, and she'll bring everything we need. And then we'll be back. When we live like that, we'll return to a rhythm that's lined with hers, and we'll be back in that alignment again that will bring health to all humanity and Mother Earth as well. So just wanted to add that piece in there, Claire, for all of you out there that are sitting and listening and receiving today. And when you go home, sit down in your moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. And I just want to commit again, you know, as we are gathering from you all these different resources, we will be putting them on that webpage so that they're just there continually. And we'll keep posting about it on the Tree Sisters Facebook page and everywhere else we can on social media. And also be thinking deeply about what we ourselves can be doing, which is what we all need to be doing. Like doing exactly what Jyoti said, sitting and listening for what we actually need to be doing so that we are at our most effective. So I'm kind of stunned by technology here, that we're sitting here with members of the Kuntanawa tribe directly from Brazilian Amazonia. Tara, are you able to take them off mute? Ruda and Haru, can you hear me? Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, we can hear you. Oh, phenomenal. Incredible technology. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And gosh, I'm supposed to introduce you. Actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. What I will say is that I've had the pleasure of meeting the Kuntanawa now twice in different occasions. They are facing extraordinary hardship. They have continually faced extraordinary hardship. They have been on the receiving end of direct genocide. Very few of their people survived. And Haru is like piecing together his culture, piecing together his tribe amidst enormous, what's the word? Opposition, like extraordinary opposition. And again, COVID is causing a lot of their food sources to be dried up, and their rivers have now been poisoned. And so they're really coming to us with a very strong call to help directly with the creation of a reservoir to see whether they can, or a lake actually, to see whether they can actually help their fish stocks to be saved so that their staple food can be protected for them. So this is a tribe right on the edge, and I'm so glad you're here, and please just take the time to share with us what is going on for you and what you need, how we can help.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Huda, and I'm here in service of translation today. And I want to introduce Haru and Haida Kuntanawa, the leaders of the Kuntanawa tribe located in Acre, Brazil. Haru has been the active chief of Kuntanawa for over 20 years and is recognized as one of the most influential young leaders of his time. Haida, originally an American, is Haru's wife and contributes and helping as a doctor and a spiritual leader to the tribe. Together, they have a great mission to help preserve the traditions of their people and also to preserve their land and guardianship of the great Amazon, which they reside in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tchau, tchau. Então, primeiro quero agradecer a oportunidade de estar conectando com vocês através dessa conferência.
First, I want to thank everyone to be able to connect with all of you through this conference.
E dizer a grande importância de estarmos discutindo e buscando alternativas juntos.
And I want to really focus on the importance of us coming together and talking about the alternatives that we have together.
Principalmente nesse momento difícil, né? Um momento difícil que estamos passando por toda a Terra, para a humanidade.
Specifically during this tough moment that we are all going through and a tough moment for the earth.
Então é um momento que nós precisamos abraçar uns aos outros e unificar as nossas forças para conseguir caminhar à frente.
And it's a moment that we must embrace each other and to be able to bring in our forces so we can walk forward.
Então nós estávamos aqui ouvindo a fala de cada pessoa os expositores que falaram e vendo, né, os problemas de cada lugar.
And we were listening to the speakers and listening into the challenges of each of the people, each of the locations around the world.
E principalmente com a questão do coronavírus, né, que vem trazendo um grande terror para a humanidade.
And specifically in regards to the coronavirus, which has really rained terror around the world.
Aqui no Brasil já são mais de 1.200 pessoas indígenas que foram infectadas.
And here in Brazil, we have more than 1,200 indigenous peoples that have been infected.
São várias tribos que já chegou o coronavírus.
Many tribes have already come in contact with coronavirus.
São mais de 82 mortes já.
More than 82 deaths.
Algumas delas lideranças, né, que a gente já perdeu.
Some of them leaders we have lost.
Sabemos que faz parte de um processo de tudo que está acontecendo aqui, né, com a destruição do planeta.
And we know that this is a moment that much destruction is going on in regards to the planet.
Então eu sinto que agora é um momento para a humanidade fazer uma grande reflexão.
So we feel that now is a great moment for humanity to work on reflecting.
E principalmente saber quais são as máscaras que nós vamos estar utilizando daqui para frente.
And to also understand and know what are the masks, what type of masks we're going to use from now on.
Porque muitos humanos usaram, né, suas máscaras falsas e destruindo a natureza, a vida das pessoas e dizendo que estava fazendo bem.
As many people around the world have utilized masks just to hide themselves and to really say that they're doing good for the people and for the world, but in reality they were not.
E para nós a grande máscara que nós sempre utilizamos foi a floresta amazônica.
And for us, the great mask that we have worn has been the Amazon rainforest.
E essa é a máscara que tem livrado a gente de tantas contaminação, que tem limpado o nosso ar, que tem purificado o meio ambiente e o ecossistema do planeta.
And this mask has prevented us and protected us from the great things that have gone around the world and have protected us from everything, all the contaminations that we find.
Então todo mundo, a gente sabe que tá assustado com esse vírus que tem chegado nas nossas tribos.
So we know that many people are frightened in regards to the coronavirus that have come to our tribes.
Aqui no estado do Acre nós temos aproximadamente entre 5 a 6 tribos que já foram afetadas pelo coronavírus.
Here in the state of Acre, we have about 5 to 6 tribes that have been affected by the virus.
Uma delas foi a nossa tribo também, que já tivemos casos na nossa família.
And one of these tribes is our tribe that we already have cases in our family.
Especificamente as pessoas que estão na cidade.
And specifically the members of our tribe that live in the city.
Na cidade mais próxima, que é da nossa aldeia.
And the city that is closest to our tribe here.
Então, os maiores problemas que nós estamos enfrentando, trazido pela coronavírus,
So one of the greatest problems that we are confronting due to the coronavirus
é esse isolamento, né, com as cidades aonde tem o suprimento que a gente ainda precisa.
and specifically in regards to the isolation that has come through this coronavirus, to isolation from the cities where we are able to obtain our resources and our food.
Ele tem afetado na segurança alimentar, tem afetado na questão de materiais, de combustíveis que a gente precisa para usar para os serviços do nosso dia a dia.
And this has really affected our food security, our ability to obtain the resources that we need, like gas, to be able to do our things here in the tribe.
E ao mesmo tempo, nós temos trabalhado uma força-tarefa dentro da comunidade para buscar a nossa própria autonomia de como garantir a sobrevivência do nosso povo.
And through this moment, we have worked to unite a workforce to be able to work on our food security and to be able to work the sustainability of our people, of our tribe.
E tudo que está acontecendo também no planeta, a gente vê que está na decorrência também da grande queimada que está havendo na floresta amazônica.
We know that many of the things that are going on around the world are due to the great fires that have been going on and raging here in the Amazon.
Porque nós vemos que os nossos líderes governistas,
because we see that the governmental leaders,
eles estão focados em outros tipos de desenvolvimentos.
and these leaders are focused on other types of development.
Com tudo que está acontecendo, a gente vê o grande aumento da destruição da floresta, política eficiente, esse tipo de invasão que tá havendo dentro das terras indígenas e nas áreas de conservação.
And at the moment we are seeing that there's more focus on the behalf of the government on how to continue deforestation and development in these areas, specifically in the indigenous lands and the reserves, the areas that should be protected.
Então, assim, o que nós vemos é que não tem uma política pública eficiente que sejam pensada para a garantia da proteção desses povos.
And we see that right now at the moment there is no politics or no policies that are in place to be able to protect and to support the indigenous communities.
E sempre os projetos que foram pensados aos povos indígenas foi pequenas coisas de assistencialismo.
And things that are there in place to support the indigenous communities are many times very small and to provide the support.
Então, eu acho que o que trouxe através do coronavírus para as comunidades indígenas também foi grande despertar, não só para os povos da cidade, mas também para nós povos indígenas.
And what has come up in this moment with the coronavirus has been not only for the indigenous peoples, but also the people in the cities.
A importância de valorizar esses conhecimentos.
The importance of valuing this knowledge here.
E a importância de difundir os conhecimentos tradicionais que está se relacionado às plantas, enfim, a muitos recursos naturais que existem aqui dentro.
And the importance of also joining and valuing the traditional knowledge that we have here in the rainforest through the plants.
E eu sinto que é o momento de a gente difundir isso com a sociedade de toda a Terra.
And it's the moment for us to open up and talk to everyone on earth about this.
Que a gente junto encontre caminho para a humanidade seguir.
And together we can find a new path for humanity to follow.
Porque o que está vindo pensado do mundo da tecnologia, do mundo socioeconômico e político,
because what is being thought and developed now from the economical standpoint and the political world
são pensamentos que não se sustentam mais.
Are thoughts that no longer are sustainable.
São pensamentos de divisão,
are thoughts of division,
de competições,
of competition,
né, e de conflito,
and of conflict.
Então, eu acredito que é um tempo para a humanidade se alertar,
So we feel that it is now a moment for humanity to become alert
e se ajudar,
and to help.
né? Ajudar a investir nossos esforços
And to help to invest our energy
e recursos
and resources
naquilo que vai fazer o bem para a humanidade.
in those things that will do well and do good for humanity.
Repensar as nossas ações
To rethink our actions
e pensar o que nós queremos deixar para nossas futuras gerações.
and to think about what we want to leave behind for our future generations.
Unificar através de redes
And to unify through networks
de simples ações,
of simple actions,
mas que se torne importante e grande para o mundo.
but these simple actions will become important and great for the world.
Então, proteger as florestas primárias, as florestas tropicais,
To really protect the primary rainforest and the tropical rainforests
deve ser algo trazido e despertado para toda a nossa humanidade.
This must be brought to everyone to awaken, for all of humanity.
Porque a destruição dessas florestas, ela vai continuar trazendo um mal muito grande para a humanidade.
Because the destruction of these forests, of these rainforests, is going to continue bringing much destruction to humanity.
E não só a floresta, mas também todas as espécies que a floresta precisa para se manter viva.
But not only the rainforest, but all of the species and the life that lives within the rainforest that makes her alive.
Entre elas, nós seres humanos.
And amongst the species, human beings.
E eu aprecio, admiro, né, a todas as pessoas que estão nessa política de defesa do meio ambiente, das florestas, dos saberes tradicionais.
And I appreciate and I admire all of those that are working to be able to strengthen and to bring back this traditional knowledge.
Mas quero dizer a todas as pessoas,
and I want to say to everyone,
No, I wasn't interrupting you.
Okay.
I wasn't interrupting you. I just wanted to, we're time constrained, and I'd love to be able to hear directly what's happening for you, where you are, and what you need, and how we can directly help. I'm totally agree with everything you're saying, and so sincerely appreciate the enormous broad view you have, and the compassion that you have, and the grace you have, considering the situation that you find yourselves in. And we want to see what we can do to help.
Yes. Já estou fechando. Aqui também quero deixar um pouco do meu tempo com a Haira.
Yes, I'm almost closing off, and I want to leave a little bit of the time for Haida to
para que ela
also go
possa
to explain
também
this.
colocar algumas coisas.
And to,
que é exatamente o que eu ia
and
chegar.
that's exactly what I was about to mention.
Todas essas espécies,
That amongst all these species,
a importância do ser humano aqui dentro
the importance of the
é
humans
muito grande.
here in the rainforest
E
is great.
os povos indígenas, eles têm uma contribuição muito grande a dar ao planeta.
And the indigenous peoples have so much to contribute to
E
humanity,
já vem fazendo isso de muito tempo.
to this planet, and they've been doing this for so long.
Então, nós precisamos de apoio aos nossos projetos.
So we our
As
project
ações que nós estamos trabalhando
and the actions that
que
we
vai
are working on,
nos garantir
which will guarantee
proteger muito mais o nosso território.
to protect our territories.
Porque nós precisamos trazer a dignidade de volta aos nossos povos.
Because we have to bring back the dignity to our peoples.
E essa questão da falta de alimento
And in regard to the lack of food,
é um problema sério para
very
as comunidades
serious.
indígenas.
it's a very serious problems for the indigenous
A
peoples.
falta de água limpa hoje
The lack of clean water,
é um outro problema.
it's another problem.
Então nós podemos solucionar tudo isso
So we can bring solutions to all of this
com implantação
by implanting
de tecnologias eficiente e limpa, de baixo impacto. Transformar as ações que estamos fazendo e potencializar elas.
and we can bring in clean and renewable technologies and apply them in ways that will support our actions and our work here. That is so important.
Então, quero deixar com a Haira também para ela poder falar um pouco e
So I want to turn it
acrescentar
over.
mais sobre esse assunto.
So I want to turn it over to Haida so she can add on a little bit more about this topic.
I just want to thank you all for being here. My name is Haida, and I'm originally an American. Also, I want to check in. How are we on time so I know how to focus this lens.
We've got just under 15 minutes left, which includes Q&A. I'm imagining that we are going to go over, but I'm not entirely sure how many of the speakers here would be able to actually go over it. So I'm going to try and keep it as tight as possible. So if you could try and for 5 minutes, and life is what it is. And actually the most important thing is that you get to let us know what's going on. So please take your time.
So I've been living here at Kuchinawa for over 3 years. When I arrived, it was a very difficult situation to observe. And since then, we've evolved, but at a slow pace to help the dignity of the people. With what happened with the genocide only 32 years ago, well, actually in 1911 there was a genocide, and then the ones that lived were forced into slavery and sex slavery. And so when they won their freedom about 32 years ago, the Kuchinawas, the government freed them, but then said, all right, enjoy your life, and that's it. And the people were left broken because they were forced to let go of all their traditions, their knowledge. They were tortured. And so they were left with high level of poverty and knowledge, like a lot of it was lost. So with Haru, he's been working really hard to connect to some of the elders and work to revitalize or to remember how to live authentically here in a way that people can step out of the poverty mindset and walk more the path of guardianship. And so there are problems here. The rivers are contaminated, they're poisoned, the fish are dying. Last year with the fires, which every year there's fires here, that's just how it is. The government is really focused on taking from the land out here because this is the oldest intact forest in the world, and what is here is amazing, but it's not for the world, it's for the planet. So anyway, so yeah, with the fires last, it was really impactful. We lost rain, and so the rivers dried up. There was lack of transportation. A lot of the wildlife died along the river. Hunting increased for some of the people that live along the river that are not associated with our tribe, though our tribe does hunt, but we tried to preserve as much as we could. People needed to eat food, and so the levels of animals lowered as well. And so what we're facing in a few months are the return of the fires, which means that our river will then lower even more. And it's projected in a few years, maybe may no longer have river water sources. So right now what we're doing is we're finding springs, we're building wells, we're asking for funds to process some of the water so that it's not contaminated. There's a lot of women that have had problems with pregnancies because of the contamination of the water, along with lots of long-term diseases. So that's been an issue. So really the focus right now on our people is to build a fish ponds to bring back the animals, the fish, clean water. Also, another layer to it is our international support, because we are vulnerable out here, and government wants to come and push the people out. I mean, it's happening all over. Sort of legal protection huge, and we're not only protecting our people, but we're protecting the undiscovered tribes on our lands. And huge system. We're also this is all new for people out here, plant plants so that people can introduce to other ways of eating food. Education is huge. There aren't any schools anymore. That's taken away this year. So that's really difficult for us. We don't have a hospital for a 2 days ride away, so we'd like to build a hospital. There's so much going on, but those are the most immediate ones, the most immediate things that we need help with. So I hope that was okay for today. Thank you guys for listening. Just really great, just really open to working with you, and shada shada.
Shada, shada. Yes, it was fabulously succinct and utterly harrowing. And I also need to say that my connection wasn't strong, so I kept missing about every 2 or 3 words that you were saying, and I don't know whether that was the same for everybody else. I got the major gist of it. The major gist being, it's a perfect storm. It's another perfect storm, although that's just the wrong way of putting it in terms of climate and persecution and lack of rights and the water drying up and the poisoning and like everything happening around you and to you, and there being no systems in place to protect you and no governance in place. And so I'm aware that I'm deeply listening, and I'm also watching the chat running down the side, and I'm seeing that links are being, there's a conversation happening and links are being shared. Of course, the link that you've given us is going to be on the page that we've got. I'm just curious, apologies that I haven't actually been able to see your story, the story of your tribe, again, which I was only able to catch probably about 80% of, but enough to understand that it's been complete hell. Is this story actually written up? Like, is there a place that we can go to actually fully understand your history to date? Because I'm just so aware that people fully understanding, it's like the Western world is just trying to get its head around things beyond itself, like to really understand the importance, the sacredness and the devastation that's going on. And so my mind just keeps going, how do we actually really position you as strongly as possible inside of the global story? And what you've gone through is so extraordinary. And I'm just wondering, is there a place that we can go to fully understand that? Is it written? Could it be written? Can we get that out there? It's just one of my questions.
Yeah. Yes, nós temos pouco dessa história no website.
So we have a little bit of this history on our website.
Mas ainda é uma coisa assim de introdução, porque o povo Kuntanawa, ele sofreu esse genocídio.
Because it's still the information that is out there, still very it's an introduction, because the Kuntanawa people have really suffered a genocide.
Então, os membros que ficaram, foram escravizados pelo sistema dos patrões da borracha.
So those members that survived were enslaved by the patron system of the bosses that came in here to extract latex.
E o Estado brasileiro não se interessou em escrever a história do povo Kuntanawa. Eles tiraram os Kuntanawa do mapa da existência, inclusive, como se tivesse sido extinto.
So the Brazilian government had no interest in really sharing and protecting the history of the Kuntanawa. Actually, they removed the Kuntanawa people from the map as if they were extinct.
Então, a minha família, os mais anciões, eles lutaram muito pela liberdade. Foi uma luta muito grande e contra esse sistema.
So the elders that are here from my family have really fought hard to be able to bring forward their existence into the system and fight the system.
E ativar a história do povo Kuntanawa novamente. A minha geração é quem, na minha pessoa, na minha liderança, que pegamos para levantar novamente, reativar a nossa cultura e tradição.
So we worked really hard, specifically through my leadership, to bring back the traditions and bring back the Kuntanawa people and the history of the Kuntanawa forward.
E a gente não tem ainda nenhum território definido, demarcado no reconhecimento oficial do Estado brasileiro.
And we, at this moment, don't have a legal demarcation yet to this moment of our people in the Brazilian map.
Mas o governo reconhece a gente, já estamos num processo de demarcação, tem um processo judicializado dentro do governo, de pedido delimitado de uma terra do povo Kuntanawa.
But we do have the the recognition from the Brazilian government of the Kuntanawa people, and we are in process of obtaining a legal demarcation that's in a judicial process at the moment.
Então esse é dos grandes problemas para nós, porque toda vez que a gente quer preservar e proteger a parte do nosso território, as pessoas falam esse território não é só do povo Kuntanawa, é compartilhado também com outros povos.
And this is a great challenge that we go through, because whenever we want to protect anything within our Kuntanawa territory, many people bring up that this is not only Kuntanawa territory, but are many other people that live here on this territory.
Então nosso trabalho aqui tem sido levantar a consciência das pessoas, ativar elas a importância da preservação, da proteção dos animais, da proteção das nossas florestas, dos rios. Enfim, é desafio muito grande.
And our work here has been to really raise people's consciousness and to be able to instill in them this importance of preserving the land, preserving nature, preserving the animals, preserving the rivers.
E é isso, como não tem uma política pública do Estado brasileiro comprometida com os povos da floresta, a gente tem sofrido muita, né, as invasões e, né, a destruição das florestas e dos animais.
And due to the fact that there are no policies in place through the government of Brazil to protect our territory, we have suffered many invasions of people wanting to come and extract resources and to hunt and other things that take away the land.
Porque a realidade é que esses povos aqui da floresta, tanto os índios quanto os não indígenas que vivem aqui dentro, estão abandonados pelo governo.
Because the truth is that both the indigenous and non-indigenous communities that live here on this land are abandoned by the Brazilian government.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really aware that we're approaching time here. I'm also really aware that it's going to be up to every single one of us that's listening here to do multiple things. One of those things is I'm going to ask all of us once, I don't know how this is going to happen, Terry, you're going to have to tell me, but as soon as this recording is, however Zoom does it, makes it available, that we actually just start sharing it. And I'm going to ask that all of us that are here share it, and then share it again, and then share it again, and then just periodically just come back and share it. There is such gold in here in terms of just beginning to sort of break open so much of what is completely unknown and not understood by the masses that needs to become exposed and known and understood by the masses. Like, people need to understand the devastating hardships that tribes globally are going through before COVID hit, and not just to go into that narrow-minded place of, well, okay, we think maybe we're coming out of lockdown, maybe it's business as usual. Business as usual is killing our planet, full stop, and it is wiping out indigenous peoples worldwide, and it cannot be allowed to happen. And that means we cannot go back to sleep, we cannot go back to business as usual, we have to take action. So there are multiple ways that we can all be taking action here, including thinking about who we know, businesses that we know, people of wealth that we know who are looking for ways to make a difference. You know, whether or not we think of ourselves as able to make contributions or not, we can, because we can all start reallocating funds. You know, there is a way in which we need all of us to bring these communities into our hearts on a permanent basis and understand they're like the organs in our own body. It's not just the forests that are the organs of our own body, or the oceans that are. It's those that protect them. We as a global family cannot survive without them. So I just want to thank each of you. And just before we go, do any of you, Atossa, Alexis, do any of you have something burning that you want to complete with that's come up during this call, Atossa?
I'm also going to share the link to the moratorium on extractivism and on evangelical missionaries and all the moratoriums that are being called for right now in the Amazon. And also tell people that we did a live stream a couple weeks ago with a lot of artists, with 60, 70 artists that came together to raise money for the Amazon Emergency Fund. We're going to do a rebroadcast of that, a relaunch of that on the 26th of June. And we invite everyone to help promote it. It's an online fundraiser for the Amazon Emergency Fund. 100% of all the support goes directly to frontline communities, and it's the indigenous people who decide what goes primarily. So we really invite people to join that effort.
Thank you so much, Atossa, and well done. What an enormous feat that was. Extraordinary, completely extraordinary. Jo.
One absolute thing that everyone has said is that we are invisible. We are not being seen. If we can't be seen, we can't be heard. So see what is around you, hear what people are saying. We are all being called to do that work.
Thank you so much, Jyoti, Alexis, Atossa, Jo, Patricia, Ruda, and Haru and Haru. Can't say your names, forgive me. I'm beyond moved. There is so much to do. There is so much to do. I think one of the first things that we all need to do is actually just sit and let this in. Like, let this in. Let yourself feel the truth of what is going on that has been condoned, that is still being condoned. The fact that we've got laws in place to perpetuate nightmares of, you know, the devastation of people in place, and that it can only continue as long as we are allowing it to. It's a numbers game. It's going to be a numbers game. And that numbers isn't just money, it's people power. You know, people power has to take over. We have to find this completely unacceptable. It can't go on. And that has to start inside each and every one of us. Like, we have to find it. We have to let it break us enough that our lives are shifted in a way that is going to directly contribute to the kind of world that does make sense to our heart. But it's got to start with an inside job, and we've got to do it. We've just got to do it. So please let this in. I'm just blown away and devastated, and also amazed by the grace that is here, and the fortitude that is here, and the courage that is here. Thank you for fighting your fights. We are with you in as much as we can, and I'm hoping that that is only going to continue, and that we're going to find more and stronger ways to learn, to understand, to get more involved, and to help. So thank you to everybody that's been here, and yeah, just sending you my deepest gratitude.
And thank you, Claire, for having such a good thought and bringing it in. Thank you.
Well, you can thank Tara, actually. Tara, who is sitting there behind the Tree Sisters logo, dreamt this into being. She is, Tara, would you please bring yourself on visually so we can just acknowledge you, because this is your, are you there? Can you reappear? How do I make you appear?
Thank you.
There you are. Yes. Thank you, Tara. This is yours. And yeah, much love to everybody, and so much gratitude.
Gracias. Thank you. Obrigado.
Shara Shara.
Shara, thank you so much. I appreciate todo mundo.
We appreciate everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everyone.
Guess we're leaving.